have officially left my rookie Linux user days behind me. I've tried almost a dozen distros, mastered the art of fixing issues with Google no Jutsu, and even dabbled in the cryptic lands of Arch-based distros. But the other day, Jake asked me something that really blindsided me. Hey Betty, have you ever used Ubuntu before? He wanted to self-host some apps on an Ubuntu PC, and I had to tell him, no. Well, I have, but that was decades ago. How have I gone this long in my Linux journey without giving Ubuntu an honest go? It's so bad, I initially told Jake to just use Fedora, because otherwise I might not know what I was doing if he needed help troubleshooting. How embarrassing is that? Me, the Linux user of the house, getting scared off by Ubuntu, of all things. So I decided now was the time to fix this, to bridge this gap in my experience. I wanted to see exactly what Ubuntu had to offer. What was I missing out on? Have I been making a huge mistake not recommending Ubuntu because I had never used it? This was about more than trying out another distro. It was about earning a very important Pokemon badge in my Linux journey so I can vet Ubuntu myself before thrusting it upon my less experienced husband. First of all, Ubuntu is a very classic distro. It's 22 years old. It's been out since 2004. That makes it old enough to drink in America. In theory, it should be so super well established and developed that I don't see why it wouldn't be easy to use. They've had decades to develop their craft. So I went to the Ubuntu website. Yes, it just screams big corporation, which might make sense since Ubuntu considers themselves an enterprise Linux solution. Clearly, I'm not the target audience for Ubuntu. You know it when the first thing you see on their website is delivering deep silicon optimization and state-of-the-art security for enterprise workloads. What does any of that mean? I'm not a developer, an engineer, and I sure as heck wasn't going to spin up a multi-cloud Kubernetes thing. Perhaps Ubuntu wouldn't be as beginner-friendly as I had thought. Anyways, I went to the download button, but there were a ton of options. You've got desktop, server, Raspberry Pi, IoT, RISC-V. What? Desktop is what I'm looking for. A free and reliable desktop OS. I was in luck. The newest LTS, long-term support version 26.04 just came out with 5 years of updates and wait a minute, is that a subscription service? Oh wait, that's only if you're a company. But for personal use, it's free. For the newest update, the system requires 6 gigabytes of RAM. My Dell XPS surely has more than that, so I downloaded it, wrote it to a boot drive, and stuck it into the laptop.
There's nowhere to put it in, so.
Look at that. The Ubuntu menu just popped up. The Wi-Fi connected, no problem. It even saw my nearby Bluetooth devices. Now that's what I'm talking about. It was Friday afternoon. I hit install. 2 hours later, it was still chugging away. Now, that's a lot longer than any other distro I've installed, but I'm patient. I'll just come back Monday morning and Ubuntu should be up and ready to run.
3 days later.
It was still going. Now, I know this Dell XPS has problems, but not that bad. So I gave up, reset everything, and I pressed install again. This time it took less than 10 minutes. Boom! I probably should have done that in the first place, huh? But finally, it's time to see what Ubuntu has up its sleeves. Out of the box, it looks quite nice. Honestly, it sort of resembles Mac, but it's a strange middle ground between Mac and Windows. You've got your time and date at the top. It's real sleek looking. Some quick settings, buttons on the right. I actually love the center time and date. It's so clean, it's so accessible. I want it on my Mac. The menu bar is on the left, which is alright too. What's less alright is the start menu is at the bottom left. It just feels like a stretch when the pin apps are on the top left and the menu is on the bottom. You're just going so much distance with your mouse. On the bright side, it's running GNOME, which is a desktop environment that makes browsing for your apps and launching them super streamlined. All you have to do is hold the super key, also known as the Windows key on most devices, and it pops up something like the overview in Windows or the mission control in Mac. From there, you just type in your app name and boom, there it is. It's like Mission Control and Raycast had a baby and out came this. It's so good that I tried doing the same thing on my MacBook, but well, it's a Mac, so you can probably guess how that went. I opened up the App Store since that's when you do when you want to install an app, right? That or go to the website and download it. Both are great options, but they require something that I just didn't have: Wi-Fi. Not only was there no Wi-Fi, but there was no way to turn the Wi-Fi on, which is really odd because it worked perfectly fine in the live version before the install. So what happened? I did what any reasonable person would do. I plugged in an Ethernet cable and Googled Dell XPS Ubuntu no Wi-Fi. And what popped up were, well, hundreds of other people who've experienced the exact same problem. That's a good thing, right? It means there's a solution to my problem out there somewhere. I ran through solution after solution. I updated the entire system, check. Update the kernel, also check. Disable secure boot, already done. Turns out it was because I was missing something called the ATH11K driver. Well, drivers, they're not so hard. You can just type in some terminal commands and get it done. Well, this one involved building and installing the kernel and kernel modules. Am I accidentally using Arch here? Why am I building kernels? What does that even mean? Thankfully, there was a guide, but that guide was outdated and was replaced by a page that leads to an error. Well, that's just great. Who needs some silly guide anyways? So I opened up the terminal and got to setting up all my packages that I needed to build these kernels, all of which went fine until I got this command that needed GitHub. It prompted me for my login, which I provided. It asked me for a password, which I also provided. And it popped me an error. GitHub, why have you forsaken me? Since when did GitHub ask for user verification anyways? I've never had to do that on any other distro. So now what? I knew exactly what I needed to do. The one thing that always somehow magically fixes my problems without fail. Restart, reboot. I booted it back up and well, it still didn't work. I ran out of solutions. Even with all my Linux knowledge behind me, I couldn't solve this. So this is how my Ubuntu journey ends? Do I go back whence I came and tell Jake I couldn't even get the internet to work properly? Is there a way to redeem myself here? But wait, maybe it's not me. I'm not the one that's messed up here. Maybe it's just the laptop. It wouldn't be the first time that it's haunted me with problems, that's for sure. If Ubuntu is good enough to charge for subscriptions, then there must be something here to back that up. What if, here's a crazy thought, what if I just try another laptop? A genius idea! And I know the exact machine I can use for this. An old friend of mine called the Ubuntu Focus, which one of my writers installed Windows on it for his work machine, but he got an upgrade recently, so it's just been sadly waiting in storage, waiting for its time to shine again. And now is its chance. With a USB-C charger and my boot drive in tow, I tried again. And this time, it worked. There it is. Wi-Fi works. Bluetooth works. I was right all along. It wasn't me or my noviceness. It was the cursed Dell XPS giving me all those problems. Now I can experience Ubuntu the way it's meant to be, as an actual working distro on a working machine. Accidents happen. Some are just small, silly ones, but you know what's not small and silly? Car accidents. And if you've ever been in one before, you know all the headache that comes with proving who was in the wrong. But with the F7NA dashcam from our sponsor, Red Tiger, you get crystal clear footage of that crucial moment, proving your innocence in 4K. With HDR, this dashcam captures everything in high quality, including license plate numbers, even when it's in the middle of the night on a dark, dim road. This is all made possible with the Sony Starvis 2 camera module, making it the perfect watchful eye that has your back. It's so easy to grab your footage from your camera too. You can access your video in seconds through the app. Plus, if you live in a place where your car turns into an oven in the summer like mine does in Texas, the F7NA is built to endure those scorching hot temperatures up to 70 degrees Celsius. With the Red Tiger 6th anniversary sale lasting until June 21st, you can get the F7NA for only $135.99 by using code RTF7NA4K in the description below. So back to the App Center I went to install OBS again. This time, I wish I could say it worked without a hitch. In the App Center, there was an OBS there, but it was clearly marked as unofficial. So where was the official version? And looking it up, it seems like the App Center version is called a Snap version, which comes with its own host of problems. So I suppose the best way is to just go to the OBS website and follow those instructions instead. But now there's a question we've all been wondering. What the heck is a Snap? Apparently, it's a package manager specific to Ubuntu, and Canonical, which is Ubuntu's parent company. The best example was one I saw on Reddit by Sorty4. Snap is an IKEA bed with the tools, and a regular package is just the components, no tools included. So a Snap houses both the application and the dependencies needed to make it run, which sounds great. But when you think about it a bit longer, it also comes with some potential bloat. I mean, how many of those L-shaped Allen wrenches do you have laying around your junk drawers? too many, that's for sure. Also, snaps are supposed to work with all the different distros. Is that just too good to be true? It's like the magical workout routine that works for everyone, whether you're a baby, an elderly person, or a busy mom. It seems impossible. That means it doesn't tackle the specific distro's many idiosyncrasies, resulting in, well, you guessed it, problems. In our case, our snaps definitely came with some of those. The snap OBS didn't even recognize my screen properly when I was trying to record. So as a logical person, I quickly uninstalled it and went for the official OBS instead. And it worked great out of the box, no problems. Surprisingly, it even played back MP4 files too. I didn't have to download any strange drivers or FFmgs or dependencies. Now I just had to get all my necessary daily software onto my Ubuntu computer. Then I could test it for real. First, I downloaded a Brave browser snap from the store. No problems there. Notion, our company software of choice, doesn't have a Linux version, but they do have a browser app. So there I was, making my lovely Notion web app into an app that I could open like a real piece of software, but it just wouldn't add to my computer. Eventually I caved and I did some research, and apparently the Snap version of Brave just comes with a variety of issues, and web apps is one of them. So back to the official install I went again. So I guess the snaps are a bust, huh? And surprise, surprise, the official install worked wonderfully. It seems like for most apps, it's better to just skip the App Store and the snaps altogether and go to the official install or the package from the actual software maker in the first place, rather than going to a proprietary store like the App Center. And looking back at the App Store, I noticed that there was an option to filter for snaps or Debian packages. Why not both? Everything is just slightly off, just buggier than I would have expected, especially for such a big company. But in the same vein, maybe all these product problems exist because they're a big corporation. My Ugreen NAS server, for example, exists on a piece of software that Ugreen develops. And despite how the NAS itself runs on a Linux-based OS, the software doesn't. They have it for Windows, Mac, iPhone, Android, but not Linux. How does that even make sense? Thankfully, there's a browser app for that too, so I just ended up making another web app. Problem solved. Then one day, my daughter wanted to watch her Pokemon on her Jellyfin server, her latest obsession. She loves Squirtle with glasses. And I wish I could say the browser app works great, but it just lags too much. The preferred way is to download the actual Jellyfin client, and Jellyfin does have Linux versions. So I just downloaded the first .deb file in their GitHub. There were a couple versions, but the first one called out to me for some reason. Easy peasy. But when I double clicked it, it threw me a nice error. I was missing some dependencies. Surprise, it's not a snap. So I tried out another package manager called Flatpak. They're just like snaps, but Flatpaks are open source and decentralized. Much like snaps, Flatpaks also contain all the supplies and the tools needed to download your app. Eventually, the Flatpak installed, but it also installed an entirely new app store called Software. I remember that from my Fedora days. I didn't realize that you could install that on the other distros too, though, so that's interesting. Looking back now, I should have just installed the dependencies and retried the deb file. Oh well, you live and you learn. So we watched Pokemon happily after that. After that, I went ahead and got my notes app of choice, Obsidian. But this time, I was hit with not a deb file, not a snap, not a Flatpak, but an app image, a completely new file type. It's getting overwhelming fast. Why are there 4 different ways to install something? With other distros, you just do it once in your terminal, sudo dnf install blah, sudo apt install blah, and it works. Double clicking on the app image didn't even work, so I went for the Flatpak install. Apparently, you have to make an app image executable by typing in a command line in the terminal. It's pretty complicated for modern day Linux. Not only that, but at some point I had 2 Obsidians in my apps list. 2! I didn't even know which one was the right one. So I did what any sane person would do. I removed the snap version, hoping that it would be the wrong one. Otherwise, I'd be in a pickle. If I was a betting person, I would have put my horse on that one. And I was right. There was just one final boss. Gaming. Printing. Just kidding. The printer worked great. I figured I might as well try some Linux gaming since it's so much better now. To Steam I went. Surprisingly, finding a download link wasn't easy. So I googled download Steam instead, and there it was. A nice little Linux Steam launcher download link. It had some poor reviews, only 3 out of 5 stars. It didn't look so good. Then I understood why. Again, there was another error, but this time it was different. A DPKG was interrupted, so I went back to the software store, typed in Steam, tried again. This one also had terrible reviews. It installed, I opened it, and nothing happened. Nada, nil. I had one more option, one final potential solution, the Snap Store. And nothing happened. Thankfully, the community had encountered all these issues before. My last hurrah, I typed in a snap install command in the terminal, and it worked. Yes, that was way harder than it should have been, and gaming on Linux really should be easier than that. I bet other distros would have no problem installing and opening up Steam, or even come with Steam by default. This sort of reminds me of my Ubuntu experience from 15 years ago when I wanted to try a free operating system. I couldn't afford Windows. I installed it for a nice 20 minutes, only to realize I had no idea how to install anything. But now I do, and I wasn't afraid to enter in a bunch of terminal commands. Gaming after that worked. I connected my controller, even though it didn't say compatible with Linux on it or anything. A couple weeks later, Ubuntu runs like how my usual computer does. It's no big deal. But at that point, I had gone through so many hurdles just to set it up. One with the Dell XPS, another with installing software, learning how to install things in a bunch of different methods, and getting used to this weird version of GNOME. Turns out, Ubuntu is actually just really complicated. It surprisingly requires a lot more command line than other beginner-friendly Linux distros, especially Fedora, Mint, and Zorin, all of which I consider ideal for Linux beginners since you can use any of them with no terminal at all. On Ubuntu, I've used the terminal like 200 times, and while I'm glad to have solved a lot of my problems, I don't think I would recommend it to Jake. He won't even switch to a Mac. It takes way too much effort to set up, but once you do that, it's pretty smooth sailing. So I've conquered Ubuntu, but honestly, I don't know if it was worth it. At best, Ubuntu is mid. The lackluster experience, along with the big corporation, just sucks away all your control. The fact that they're forcing you to use snaps is like Windows is forcing users to use their Microsoft App Store, which doesn't work half the time anyways. And if it really actually saved time, then fine. But it doesn't. I went back to Jake again, but I was way more confident when I told him, hey, just use Fedora instead. Maybe I don't need to conquer all the Linux distros. I'm pretty happy with my small yet mighty selection. To anyone that asks me about Linux, I can always respond with Mint, Fedora, Zorin. Pick one and you won't go wrong. Just have fun. And if you need guidance on how to install your first Linux distro, I've got the perfect members only video for you right here.